My name is Rich Brewer Jr. This is kind of a neat opportunity for us because as you just were told, my dad knew nothing of this up until a couple hours ago, and the reason is he would have never approved of us standing up here talking about him. Now let me tell you, my sister loves to talk. I'm going to let her talk for a few minutes. I just do it because I inherited that from my dad, but we're not going to let Dad talk today. This is about Dad. The bottom line is he never talks about himself. He talks about everything else under the sun, and some of it he actually knows what he's talking about. But in this particular instance, we're just going to talk a few minutes about Dad being the oldest male descendant, I guess, of Sam Hughes. Probably you know Grandma and Grandpa Hughes were our great-great-grandparents. Were the Frank and Margaret Treat were our great-grandparents, and of course, Grandma Mabel's Treat Spooner is our grandma. Just wanted to clarify that. But before I started, I wanted to let my little sister, who's going to be very brief, talk to you very shortly, in a couple seconds actually, about our grandma. Kind of set the tone for Dad and where he came from, obviously. So I'm gonna do this.
Well, yes, I thought it would be fitting to pay tribute and honor to my grandmother, Mabel Treat Spooner.
We think this is Grandma, and Dad's going to have to validate some of these pictures because it could be any other cute little kid.
She was a person of strong character, mental stability, and deep moral convictions. My grandmother was the eldest child of Frank and Margaret Treat. She was 14 when her mother died, and on her mother's deathbed, she handed my grandmother the baby Teddy and said, "This is your living doll, take good care of him." And so my grandmother always had a very special affinity for Teddy. This is my grandmother with her two of her sisters, Toadie and Sis. When she was a young girl, of course, being left with the baby and the eldest of 7, she still had to continue her education. So she went to the school with the sisters, and they encouraged her to bring Teddy with her. So she kept the baby. Of course, there was an Indian woman who wet nursed him, but she took him to the school with her and cared for him by her desk until he became too vociferous. And the sister said, "Well, let us take him to the laundry room and we'll take care of him down there," which they thoroughly enjoyed because he was a bouncing baby boy. My grandmother was a person with many fine talents. She was a proficient horsewoman, and her father, Frank Treat, bought her a Lipizzaner stallion, and she trained the horse so well to do various tricks that he eventually sold the horse to Ringling Brothers. But she instilled in me, and I instilled in my daughters, a great love for horses, and to this day my daughters train and work with their own horses. Additionally, she was a superb cook, and I think this picture is of her in San Francisco, Dad, perhaps, and she conducted a radio show instructing other women how to cook. She was also an excellent seamstress, and I remember she spent countless hours at her Singer's sewing machine, which her grandmother, Adanasha, gave to her. And she gave her this little basket as well. And she gave me the Singer sewing machine and the basket. She handed it on to me. And this little basket is a treasure. I love this basket because when I look at it, I remember every day she would get into this basket. And it held sewing bric-a-brac, but also little treasures. And so she had this by her bedside at her death. You know, even up into the last days, she had this beside her. And she died at 102, or she was nearly 102. There's some dispute about this. She was born in 1890. And she returned to the faith of her grandmother, Grandma Adanasha Hughes, and the faith of her baptism. She became a Catholic in her last year of life. And I just wanted to share with you the story of her death, if I can.
maybe I'll just move on and talk about Dad.
And maybe well, I'll
Yeah, you
try.
can talk.
Let me try.
Do it.
Let me try. Because she died such a beautiful death. And I think it's important for you to hear the story. She had us gathered around her bed, and she asked us to say the Hail Mary with her. And so we held hands, because that's what she wanted us to do. And she blessed every child. And she said that she loved each one of them. And she blessed them, and she said, I love this family. I love all of you. And I held her hand, and I could see that she was bridging two worlds. She was completely coherent and lucid. But her eyes, I could not see what her eyes were beholding. And she said, Papa, oh Papa. And then she said, Aunt, and I can't tell you who. And then she also said, in a questioning tone, Uncle, Uncle, in a very surprised way. And then she spoke to our Lord. And as I said, she was, and then she would go in and out of that. And then she died within an hour. But it was a very beautiful death. And she was not afraid to die because she was not afraid to live. And I hope each one of you are blessed with a beautiful death as well.
But not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
No. Thanks, Laura. Now it brings us to Dad, and as you can see here, this is Dad and his little dog, and that's his dad, Francis Cecil Spooner, obviously. Got that right, Dad?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to have to get some input from Dad every now and again, because as I said, Dad doesn't talk about himself very much. He talks about a lot of other things, and those of you who get to know him will find that he talks mostly about the Marine Corps. In this family, two things that define my dad. This family, the Hughes family, being a descendant, he's really adamant about all the kids knowing everything they can about this family. But also the other thing is the Marine Corps, and I'll get to that in a few seconds. This is Dad, looks like being a spoiled child. You know, being an only child, I have to think he was. And these are cute little pictures of Dad. I don't see the resemblance, but good looking guy, Dad.
That's cute there.
Yeah. And this is Dad exploring the, I understand there's a butterfly there that you're looking at. I can't see it, but that's cute. A lot of these pictures, these are copies of copies of copies, because we've had to get these anywhere we could. And Dad being cool on the first set of wheels there. Now this is Dad and his pets. My sisters know these animals' names. I'm sure I don't, but there's two dogs there. You might see the little one. What's that little guy's name, Dad?
Scotty was Kilby,
And the other dog?
the Australian Shepherd, which was older than I. He lived with me the first 16 years of my life. His name was Bob.
But you also have a chicken up there on the shoulder, I'm told. I'm not going to ask about the chicken, and whatever happened to that, I'm sure I don't know. We'll move on from there if we could. And this is Dad, again, with this little, I don't know where you got this pet, but obviously being a happy only child. I understand that Grandma was really embarrassed about this picture because you'll notice he's wearing a safety pin and wasn't able to sew a button on his shirt that day. And this is Dad getting a little older, of course. Looking rather dapper, I must say. Now, this is starting to define my dad. He obviously liked uniforms. This is young Dad as a Boy Scout. I think the uniform thing went to his head a little bit because, as you'll see in the next picture, I wanted to put this picture in here because, if you can hold on this one, this is an Army uniform. Is this California Civil Patrol, Dad? Is that what that is?
It's California State Guard.
Okay. Now, you would not otherwise see my dad or even have him talking about being in an Army uniform. It's just you have to know my dad. But anyhow, I wanted to show this. One of the things that I said a minute ago that defines my dad is his family, but another thing is the Marine Corps. And it's literally been his whole life. And this
Like
will tell you about
California
it.
native Rick Spooner, who was just 17. You went down to Fresno, California, Mr.
No, they had turned me down a couple of times and knew who I was, so I got to San Francisco with a new birth certificate. It worked a lot better than I was a little underage when I enlisted, but they needed guys.
Have you grown up in the Corps?
No, but I grew up around a lot of Marines as a kid. Pacific Fleet headquarters used to be in California, and as a little boy, I'd seen Marines coming back. They weren't good as a cow, they were magnificent. To a little kid, that was impressive. So I was captivated by the Corps.
One of the things about my dad, you know, honor, courage, commitment. Those are Marine Corps words, but you know what? These are also words he's raised us by. This is from an interview from Fox TV show that Ollie North has. This is Dad. I think you're not even 19 yet, Dad, is that right?
Well, it's probably 18 or 19.
He's getting his second Purple Heart after landing the Saipan. After this, I think he decided that, well, he went on to get a few more Purple Hearts and a few other things, but the bottom line is he realized that after that, getting shot wasn't really good, but the Marine Corps itself was pretty good. Now, of course, we can't talk about Dad without talking about Mom, because that's from whence we come. I have to embarrass her as well. This is Gloria Maria Lopez. This is a graduation picture, and I know it's ancient, but Mom, you look great here. But from Mom comes all of us. My older sister Anna over here, my little sister Laura, wherever she went off to, and pretty much the whole side of this room are her kids. My sister Jess is somewhere here with her family. I'd have them stand up, but it's dark now. And my sister Jess is back here. And then my wife and my two charming daughters are over here, being as quiet as they can. It's just killing me. This is Dad being very dapper in Hawaii after their wedding, I assume, right, Dad? He's looking very cool. You can
Yes,
see
it was shortly after we were married.
Yeah. And then, of course, Mom and Dad. I think you're on your honeymoon. I can't tell because I know you lived in Hawaii for a time, because that's where my older sister
She had
Anna.
just come to Hawaii to join me at that time.
So the next one will show my sister Anna. There. At that point, I think Dad decided some years on to stay in the Corps. As I said, it's become a big part of his life and a part of our lives. Dad's impact on the Corps has been significant over these many years and on our lives. My brothers-in-law and I all have been in the Marine Corps, and it's a big part of us. I have a few other video clips here that you'll see what I mean, and this is one of them. He's going to kill me for this.
When I was a small boy, I used to watch the sailors and Marines come ashore from the huge great battleships and cruisers of the old U.S. Pacific Fleet. To a youngster in the early days, those Marines wearing their dress blues and walking tall looked like they owned the world. They were an impressive role model for a young man. When I finally became a Marine, the old Corps was rapidly disappearing. It was being transformed into a dynamic Corps of 6 fighting Marine divisions and 4 air wings that would fight their way across the Pacific in some of the toughest battles of history. After boot camp, I went overseas as a teenage PFC and joined the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, a great outfit with a distinguished combat record. The Marines I knew during the Second World War were the finest, toughest, most profane, and somehow the most compassionate men I've ever known. And there wasn't an atheist among them. There are no atheists in combat. All the protection you've got is your rifle and bayonet and your steel helmet. The enemy has a bunker 200 meters to your front, and he's well dug in. There's a flight of Marine Corsairs overhead. They come in low and slow, blast hell out of the enemy to your front. One of the planes circles back over our position, and the pilot dips his wings. He's saying, "It's okay now, we got him." He's also reminding us that he's a Marine too. It's the hot sand on your sweaty face as you flatten yourself out on the blood-stained slopes of Saipan's Mount Tapachow, and you pray that the next round won't have your name on it. A corpsman stumbling across a pockmarked battlefield under fire to apply a tourniquet, give you a swig of water and dress your wound. It's a flag-draped coffin, 3 volleys fired over the grave of your best friend. A band is playing Semper Fidelis. And then they play the Marines hymn. You're standing at attention, but shivers go up and down your spine, and there's a warm trickle down your cheeks. And you realize that maybe you're not such a tough Marine after all. Being a Marine is a state of mind. It's a deep feeling of dedication, and it's a vocation. It's so many things. Some of them make you glad, some make you sad, some make you smile, and all of them make you proud that you're a Marine. It's a feeling that's difficult to describe, but it's good and it's right, and when deep down in your heart you have that feeling, the spirit of Semper Fidelis, you really are someone. You know it, God knows it, and your country knows it.
This is Dad, let me tell you. As a young Marine, Dad goes on and becomes commissioned as an officer in the Corps and impacts literally thousands and thousands of lives, even today. He's retired, but he's really never retired. Dad's still a Marine, just like any Marine you ask, you're always a Marine. My brothers-in-law will tell you the same thing. This is Dad going up through the ranks. I will tell you that I keep talking about the impact he's had. I'll share that with you. He's going to hate me for saying this too, but if I'm going to embarrass him, I'm going to go all the way. His book comes out 1 November. I'm not even going to tell you the title because that's, he'll get upset about that as well. But if you want to, that's really Dad's story from World War II on up, and it's a story really to young Marines, about young Marines and what it's like to be a Marine. I talk about the Marines because that's our family as well. Everything he just said, that's what we were raised like. That's our family, all of us. So there you have it. That's Dad as a young lieutenant, by the way, looking rather dapper again. And he went on to become what he has become today, a restaurant owner. But I have to say, even the restaurant.
Rick Spooner stayed in the Marines and retired in 1972 as a major. He owns and operates the Globe and Laurel restaurant just outside the gates of Quantico.
You have to be, Marcia, you've been there, right? It's totally a Marine place. It's a very famous place in the Corps. He doesn't advertise, it's just word of mouth pretty much, and if you know about this place, you know about Marines. Every young Marine officer that becomes a Marine officer knows about this place, and is pretty much, it's part of the rite of passage to go to this place and be schooled by my old man. He's filled with Marine Corps history. He's filled with history about the Hughes family that he keeps trying to teach all of us. But let me tell you, if there's anyone that knows more about the Marine Corps, I haven't met him yet. I'm sure he's written part of it, and he's instilled it in a lot of us, and the basic ethos, the lifeblood of the Corps is right there. And I'll tell you, he's sharing it with all of us and all our kids and all our families, and that's what we're about. Semper Fidelis, always faithful to the Corps, to your family, and those around you. And that's all I have. You know what, Dad, I don't remember the name of your book, but that's kind of why I kind of stay away from that. What was that again?
The book is The Spirit of Semper Fidelis.
Right, Spirit of Semper Fidelis. You know, I'll tell you quite frankly, I was going to try to steal that as well. His jacket has been just, I guess, recently published, right? I was going to put it in here, but literally, he just got it FedEx to him, I guess, a couple days ago. So I didn't have time for that because, again, he didn't know anything about this. And I hope we embarrassed you just enough. Right? It's kind of a nice treat to be able to talk about your dad instead of him talking about anything else. Thank you very much.
And I just want to make a comment too. And I think if you ask my father what person had the greatest impact on his life, he would say it was Grandma Adonijah Hughes.
Yeah.